What is going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and let's talk the Soulknife Rogue in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This one did have 2 iterations in the Unearthed Arcana before the final version we see in Tasha's Cauldron, and we'll get to that in just a sec. But beforehand, I just wanted to let you know that, hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, the numbers have been going up consistently, and I really do appreciate it. It makes me feel good, makes me feel inspired to keep out and going doing these videos. It also helps grow the clout of the channel and allows me to do cool things and find sponsors and, you know, partnerships with people, and I really do appreciate that. It helps me keep doing what I'm doing, not even at such a breakneck pace to put these videos out. But eventually that will curtail and we'll go back to a regular daily upload schedule. That being said, I've talked a lot about the YouTube here. I've mentioned the Twitch channel where I stream at least twice a week, but I wanted to let you guys know, some of you have been asking and I've seen it coming up. I do have a secondary YouTube channel, and if you like want to see me DM games, either live play DM games, there are a whole bunch of, if you search back through the channel, a whole bunch of live plays, whole campaigns here on this channel. That was before I got to the content of separating out live plays to a separate channel, which I do have a secondary YouTube channel called Nerd Immersion Plays. There's a link for that in the description, where you can watch just a ton of D&D content, from our Evil campaign to my Homebrew campaign to one-shots and so on. So if you're looking for D&D content to consume, whether you're bored during work and you want to listen to something, whether you want to watch something because you're trying to escape from family stuff, if you don't want to deal with your family on Thanksgiving and you want to just go binge me talking to my players for 3 hours, you can go and do that. Anyway, so let's jump in here. Unearthed Arcana on the right, Tasha's Cauldron on the left. I just wanted to showcase, it originally showed up back in 2019 here, where we had the Psychic Warrior. Before that became the Psi Knight and became the Psi Warrior. Here was a Soul Knife, and then what we'll compare it to is the Psionics Options Revisited one. This one had the funky Psionic talent mechanic that not a lot of people liked, myself included. I was one of the people who didn't enjoy that. But that being said, that was thrown out, and we got our final version. And then there's a couple interesting things we can talk about at the end if we compare this to the Psi Warrior. But let's take a look. So obviously we know the Psionic talent concept disappeared, but you did get some abilities, right? So the Psionic talent was, I'm not going to explain it, but it was like an increasing, decreasing die mechanic. Instead, we get Psionic energy dice, which is sort of similar to like a Battle Master's maneuver dice, where each die is a d6. It starts as a d6, and you have a number equal to twice your proficiency bonus. And you use them to fuel your mechanics. You get them all back when you finish a long rest, and once a short rest as a bonus, as a bonus action, you can regain one of them once a short or long rest. And at cantrip scaling levels 5, 11, and 17, the die type increases to a D8, a D10, and then eventually a D12. So we can see originally here we had what was called Psi Bolstered Knack, which was when your non-psionic training fails you, tap into your psionic powers. If you fail an ability check with a skill or tool with which you have proficiency, you could roll your psionic talent die and add it, potentially turning a failure into a success. It's pretty much the same thing. If you fail an ability check using a skill or tool with which you have proficiency, roll the psionic energy die, add it to the roll. You expend the die. Here's the interesting part. You expend the die only if the roll succeeds, which is nice because it lets you retain that. Interesting to see. I don't believe that the Psi Warrior had mechanics like this where you only expend the die if you succeed. But either way, that's like a minor thing, so I do like that. And originally, we also had something called Psychic Whispers. As an action, you can give yourself and at least one other creature the ability to speak telepathically with each other. When you do so, roll the Psionic Talent die and choose a number of creatures you can see up to the number rolled. For 1 hour, the chosen creatures can speak telepathically with you and you with them. To send or receive a message, you and another creature must be within 1 mile, and they can't use the telepathy if they can't speak any languages, and a creature can end it as whenever they want. You and the creature don't need to speak a common language to understand each other. You just need to speak a language. So that was Psychic Whispers, sort of like a miniature Rary's telepathic bond, but at level 3. Psychic Whispers now is, as an action, choose one or more creatures you can see up to, we're using proficiency bonus, here's the mechanic, up to a number of creatures equal to your proficiency bonus, and then roll a psionic energy die for a number of hours equal to the number rolled. So previously it was roll the die, and that tells you how many people you can affect, and it was for 1 hour. Now it's proficiency bonus number of people, a number of hours equal to the die roll. So you're starting with a minimum of 1 hour, and possibly at higher levels up to 12 hours worth of telepathic communication. To send or receive a message, you and the other creature must be within 1 mile of each other. They can't use this telepathy if they can't speak any languages, and they can end it as no action. You and the creature don't need to speak a common language. It says the first, and here's the other wonderful thing about this, the first time you use this power after a long rest, it doesn't use a die. So you can basically use this, which again, I feel like the rogue gets all of these cool features that like you don't expend it if you fail, or the first time you go to use this, it's a freebie. And I think that kind of like is a little bit of a downside to the Psi Warrior, which I love. The Psi Warrior, not that there's a downside, but I like it a lot. But interesting that the rogue has all of these mechanics to like use them for free. But yeah, the first time after a long rest that you use this, it's free, and you don't have to expend. You still roll the die to determine how many hours it is, but it doesn't expend a use of it. So then any time subsequently after that, you roll the dice. And again, as higher levels, you could possibly have this for 24 hours using only 1 die if you roll 12 both times. And then Psychic Blades is sort of your main feature here. This is what you see in the art here with this sort of psionic. And I think we've seen it's like a Psylock, right? That's very Psylock-ish. We've seen that kind of thing in the psionics in the past from older editions. So originally here, when you're about to make a melee or ranged weapon attack against a creature, you manifest the Psychic Blade from your free hand and make an attack. So it's sort of part of the attack. It is a simple melee weapon with finesse and thrown properties. That means it works for the uses of sneak attack. Has a normal range of 60 feet and no long range. On a hit, it deals psychic damage equal to a d6 plus the ability modifier you use for the attack roll. So again, that means if you're using strength, it uses strength. If you're using dex, dex. The blade vanishes immediately after it hits or misses its target and leaves no mark on the target if it deals damage. Depending on the scenario, if you're doing an assassination or something like that, this is a psychic blade. You could stab someone with it and there's no proof that they were stabbed. After you attack with the blade, you can make a melee or ranged weapon attack with a second blade as a bonus action, provided your other hand is free to create it, and that one is a d4 instead of a d6. However, note, folks, it says the original one here, it deals damage equal to a d6 plus the ability score used to make the roll. And here it says you can attack with another one, but it uses a d4 instead of a d6. I think, if I'm reading that correctly, that second one also gets the ability modifier to this, so it removes sort of the need for dual weapon fighting. Now, that was the Unearthed Arcana. Let's see what happens in the published version. Maybe it'll clear it up. So whenever you take the attack action, you can manifest a Psychic Blade and make an attack. So that's great. You don't have to use a bonus action to make it. It just is part of the attack. It is a simple melee weapon with finesse and thrown, has a normal range of 60 feet and no long range. So that's my question. No long range. I think that means that it just works out to 60 feet regardless. Because in theory, depending, like normally, you can attack out to your normal range without disadvantage, and then out to your long range with disadvantage. Because it has no long range, I think that means it's just 60 feet. I'm sure there's going to be some people that are going to say, well, it has no long range, so I have an infinite range. But I don't think it's designed to be like that. There is no long range, so it's just 60 feet. It deals psychic damage equal to a d6 plus the ability modifier used to make the attack roll. Vanishes, leaves no damage. And then we kept that same bit. After you attack with a blade, you can make a melee or ranged attack with a second blade as a bonus action, provided you have the free hand. Its bonus action is a d4 instead of a d6. So as far as I can tell, that's d6, d4, thrown, finesse, dealing psychic damage, still functions for the purposes of using sneak attack. So if you miss with the first one, the second one can maybe hit and deal sneak attack. So I think you can do ability modifier on the offhand, therefore allowing you to not need two weapon fighting or to get the extra damage. All right, then at 9, we had Soul Blades, which gives you some other abilities here. Homing Strike. If you make an attack roll with your Psychic Blades and miss, you would roll the Psionic talent die and add the number to the attack. If it causes it to be a hit, well, we don't have to worry about the decrease in there. So let's see. Homing Strikes. If you make an attack roll with your Psychic Blades and miss the target, you can roll one Psionic energy die and add the number rolled. And here's the other, say again, what I'm talking about. If this causes the attack to hit, you expend the Psionic energy die. So again, another example of you could use this to try to increase your attack roll, which would be great. And it would suck if you missed, but it doesn't expend it if you miss. So like, there's no reason not to do that. Oh, I missed. Let me try and see if I hit. Oh, well, I didn't, so I didn't lose anything. Or I did. Hey, look, I hit, which is great. Again, I'm a little jealous. I think me, in this instance, I am the Psi Warrior being a little jealous about how the Soul Knife has all these mechanics to not expend them sort of accidentally. Psychic teleportation also was, as a bonus action, you manifest one of your psychic blades and throw it at an unoccupied space you can see, up to a number of feet equal to 5 times the number rolled on the die, and you teleport to that space, the blade vanishes, and it would decrease, but that's not a thing we have anymore. So bonus action, manifest a die, expend a psionic energy die and roll it, throw the blade to an unoccupied space you can see, up to a number of feet equal to 10 times the number rolled. You teleport to that space and the blade vanishes. So now, originally we were doing 5 times. We are still keeping the bonus action to do this. So you could do this, think about this, folks, right? You could do this beforehand, before you make an attack. We're at level 9, so our psionic die is a D8 at this point. So we could potentially teleport up to 80 feet as a bonus action for 1 expended die. And that could be, we could teleport 80 feet and then still use our action to move. Or sorry, not even our action, still use our movement. That's an 80-foot potential, 10 to 80-foot teleport that we can use, and then still use our movement after that to possibly close the distance to track someone down, chase someone down. And then again, we could still use our action to throw our psychic blade 60 feet. So we have a pretty decent amount of movement we can do. This could be a great get out of jail free card too. I mean, it's literally a roll of the die, so you don't know if you're going to teleport 10 feet or 80 feet. But it's you roll it. It says manifest it and roll the die first, and then you throw it. So it's not like you're going to be like, I'm going to teleport over there, and then you roll 10 feet and you just like in the middle of the air and drop and fall. You roll it first so you can have an idea of where you're going to end up. I super like that ability. It's very flavorful. Psionic Veil at 13. As an action, you can magically become invisible along with anything you are wearing or carrying for 10 minutes or until you dismiss it. It has no action. It ends if you deal damage to a creature or if you force it to make a saving throw. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest unless you expend a psionic die. Psychic Veil is, again, as an action, you magically become invisible along with anything you're carrying or wearing for 1 hour. It ends immediately after you deal damage or force a creature to make a saving throw. Once you use this feature again, you can't do it until you finish a long rest unless you expend a psionic energy die to use this feature. This is very similar to the things I was talking about with the Psi Warrior. I really like how it can be used for a roll to do a thing, add something to something, subtract something from something else, or it can be used just as a resource that you can expend to access or re-access an ability. So it says whenever you deal damage or force a creature to make a saving throw, otherwise it is a 1 hour invisibility, which is nice because that doesn't mean you're incapable of doing actions. You could dodge, you could disengage, you could drink potions, activate a magic item, do things as long as they don't cause someone damage or to make a saving throw. You could heal somebody if you have access to healing, pour potions down people's throats, whatever. Those are all options for you to do while you're invisible. And it's an action, so it's usable in combat. And lastly, we had Rend Mind here. When you use your psychic blades to deal sneak attack damage to a creature, you can force them to make a wisdom save based off of your dex mod. Unless they save, they're stunned until the end of your next turn. And once you use this feature, it's till a long rest unless you would use your psionic die. So, when you use your psychic blades to deal sneak attack, you can force that target to make a wisdom save, still based off your dex. Oh boy, look at this. Unless the save succeeds, originally it was the target is stunned until the end of your next turn. Now, if the save fails, the target is stunned for a minute. The stunned target can repeat the saving throughout the end of each of their turns, ending it on a success. Once you use this feature, you can't do so until you finish a long rest, unless you expend 3 psionic dice to use it again. But originally, it was unless the save succeeds, they're stunned until the end of your next turn. So it was basically a 1-turn stun. Now this is a potentially a minute-long stun, and they get to make the save at the end of their turn, so they're still losing the save, or still losing the turn, right? And there's no downside, right? Like if if they don't get stunned, okay, that sucks. You get it once, and then if you want to use it again, you have to expend 3 psionic energy dice. So that sucks, right? To have to spend those. But it's a pretty powerful ability. At level 17, you'll have 12 dice total. So that's cool. And it's a minute-long stun, and the stun doesn't break if your allies are hitting them. So your allies can just wail on this stunned creature and get the benefit of the advantage on the attacks and them not being able to do anything. And that's sort of just like a freebie. And it's nice because it's when you deal sneak attack damage. So you'll never accidentally use this. It's when you hit and you've dealt sneak attack damage, then you can choose to opt in to use this. And then they're stunned possibly for a minute. They get to make the save, but they still lose their whole turn because it happens at the end of their turn if they fail. And then you can still do it multiple times. So the only other thing I wanted to look at was, this is something that a lot of people have brought up, and I thought it was worth diving into, is what about, and I don't know if there's actually a canonically like written answer from anybody, and I may try to reach out to like Jeremy Crawford or someone and see if we can get an answer. So our Soul Knife here has what's called psionic energy dice. And it says this is represented by your psionic energy dice, which are a d6. You have a number equal to twice your proficiency bonus. The psionic power feature of the Psi Warrior uses the exact same thing, saying this energy is represented by psionic energy dice, which are a d6, equal to twice your proficiency bonus. Now, it's your proficiency bonus, not to your levels in this class. So let's use a hypothetical. I'm a level 17. This is obviously, we're talking level 20, so this will be nutty, but let humor me. Let's say I'm a level 17 Soul Knife, and I take my last 3 levels in Psi Warrior. Did I just get a pool of 24 psionic energy dice to use for either class? Do I have to keep 12 and 12 and keep them separate? Because at this point, my proficiency bonus is a +6. So I have 12 psionic energy dice for my Psi Warrior level 3 abilities and 12 psionic energy dice for my Psi Warrior. They're both called psionic energy dice. Is that how it works? I don't know. They're using the same name. And like, that was a very extreme example, 17 and 3. But what if you're somewhere in the middle, and because it's tied off proficiency bonus, there's no negative there to multiclassing? Is this a way for you to get around that limited number of psionic energy dice to get a whole bunch? I don't know. Something we can attempt to try, I don't know if it will work, is to go into D&D Beyond real quick, and we'll just create a character, and we'll see if we can't just make this happen. So we'll just grab Eric Hoker because it's first on the list, and we'll go with what do we need? We need a fighter. We need level 3. And we're going to choose Psi Warrior. And we're going to go ahead and add another class. We're going to add a Rogue. And we're going to add level... You know what? Why don't we do 8 and 8? So we'll be a higher level here. And we'll choose Soul Knife. Okay. We're going to go to our ability scores. We have to... I don't know. We'll do standard array. And we'll make sure, you know... We just, whatever, I don't care. These are not important. It's just whatever it is. And now we'll go look and see. This isn't a guarantee that this will work. But let's see. Psionic, series of psychic blades. Psionic, does it list our psionic energy dice anywhere? Action surge. Oh, see, look, it lists them separately. You have 10 psionic energy dice that are a d8 that fuel your various psionic powers, and then psionic powers, psionic energy. So here on D&D Beyond, it says they don't stack. It says that they are separate pools for each class. It's just an interesting concept because they both are, they're both using the exact same name. So I don't know if the intention is that you'd be able to combine the two. It doesn't appear so on D&D Beyond. And again, while that's not the end-all be-all for everything, it's usually a pretty good indicator if it's allowed or not. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. One, what do you think its rules as written or rules as implied to be on this? Is it supposed to be they are two separate pools, even though they use the exact same name and the exact same features in every way? They scale with cantrip scaling levels, blah, blah, blah. All of that happens to be the same. The only thing I think that I didn't touch on is I believe the scaling levels. That might be the trick, right? When you reach certain levels in this class, the size of your die increases. So if I have 5 levels in Soulknife, it's a D8, but I only have 3 levels in Psi Warrior, it's still a D6. So that might be the split there is, you know, that's how it is. This could be, I could see this being also handled very similarly to the way the Battle Master maneuver dice are handled, where if I take the Battle Master or the, you know, the feat that's in the player's handbook that gives me a maneuver, it also gives me another superiority die, and that superiority die is the highest one available, and I have them from being a Battle Master. Say they're D10s from being a Battle Master. The one normally in the player's handbook gives me a D6, but it becomes a D10 to match with that. So anyway, my question is to you, do you think it's supposed to be, as I'm sort of seeing it here, that they are two separate pools of dice and the main qualifier is because levels in the class dictate that? Or what would you, and I guess additionally to that, what would you rule at your table? If someone wanted to multi-class into Psi Warrior and Soulknife, seemingly for the purposes of getting extra psionic energy dice, would you allow them to combine them into a group sort of stacked ability, or would you say no, it's not intended? I'm genuinely curious, because while I don't see this happening in any of my games in the near future, someone will bring this up in some game that I play and ask this exact question, and I personally haven't decided where I land on it. Well, I think again the intention is to keep them separate. I sort of want to allow them to stack. It just sort of makes sense in my head, the fact that things are, like, they could have called it, like, Psionic Warrior, Psionic, you know, Cunning or something for one, and the Psionic Energy for the other. They could have changed the name, and then there wouldn't have been any question, or put a caveat in there and says this doesn't, you know, stack with any feature of the same name or something like that. But to me, like, the argument could be made that they could stack, and I would probably be willing to allow it at my table. Am I way off base and crazy for thinking that, or where do you guys stand? So anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all